was my grandmother's actual sewing machine. This is my grandmother's sewing machine. And we brought it back from Los Angeles. We had to go back the next year, rent a car and drive it back. And family is most important. And in the middle, when Jacob was just a little kid, they had a FinFest or a Finnish thing at the Iron World up in Chisholm. And we put this sandwich board on and please tell me stories about my grandfather, Arne Vainio. And we walked him through there. And we got in the door and somebody knew my father. And it was beautiful. And, I mean, boarding school and relocation things notwithstanding, and difficult journeys from Finland and suicides, whatever. I wouldn't trade anything to be anyone else. I am both sides. I am Finnish and Native. I am Findian. And all of you and I, when we meet, we will get along. Kiitos ja miigwech. Miigwech in Ojibwe is thank you. And actually it doesn't exactly mean that. There's a deeper meaning to it, but the tradition, yeah. So it's question time. So that's it. And kiitos ja miigwech bizindawi. I thank you for listening to me. So I don't know if you're going to ask questions or exactly how to do it. There's some chat things here.
Put
Sauna tomorrow at 8:34.
Who is that?
That's the dog.
Hey, Steve.
do we know you?
Announced this month that it will stop
Oh.
the Brackenbury Channel to promote the city through what it calls acts of wizardry. Channel has made its reputation by performing in character, poking fun at the Christchurch establishment.
So Louise, we're trying to make you the host.
In 1998.
Are you the host, Louise?
Street performer has been a fixture around Christchurch since he arrived in the 1970s. What are you trying to do for the people? Well, basically, I'm trying to give them.
Yeah, I am the host.
Okay.
Somehow the electricity in my house went off, and then when it rebooted, it made me the host again. So
Okay.
I am trying to see about muting people.
All right. You're the official host. We'll mute I guess we'll stay on.
But anyway, anybody have any questions? I'm sure there's some questions for Arne, for Dr. Vainio.
Vainio.
Thank you, Ivy.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I wrote it on my script everywhere. Then about that.
Yeah, remember the buses, the Vainio bus.
Vainio bus, yeah. So,
But there's another undercurrent that the wizard is out of step with the times. And there's been pressure over the past year to get Channel to retire.
Can people mute themselves, please? Unless you want to ask a question.
That's already better.
thank you.
Oh, somebody has that same singer.
Oh, cool. Yeah, those old sewing machines are beautiful, and they're magic. I mean, somebody figured that thing out, and it's 115 years old, and it still works like it's supposed to.
Someone has a question here. So why were there so many Finnish? Oh, I think you probably answered it. Why so many Finnish names on the reservation?
Yeah, I mean, just because Finns and Ojibwe people, they live in the same sort of territory, and
Intermarried.
yeah, intermarried, and so I mean, even I was surprised at how many Finnish names there were on the reservation. And when I started driving around taking pictures of the signs, I mean, it really sunk in that we're connected.
There's a question here that is, what is your sauna quest?
So Steve Lepala and I, we take saunas in historic saunas, and we're always looking for a Savu sauna in the United States, and we're scheming on building one of these days. And but saunas they're important to both of us, and that's an important. So Steve and I start at 8:34 in the morning, sometimes 8:36, and but we sauna till close to noon most of the time. 11 o'clock, and it's an important time for both of us.
Wow, that's a long sauna.
It is a long sauna, and we've been doing it for a long time. So
Betty Wheelclaw wants to know if you went to Cook and Alango schools?
yep,
Alango.
went to both. So lived in Alango and went to Alango school.
Alango.
Yep, and then so Cook High School, my graduating class was 52 students, and I think the population of Cook was 570 something, but I did, and then went to Bear River School from Alango School. So I was in Bear River for the fourth, fifth, and sixth grade. There was 32 kids in the school. 16 of them were in the second grade. There was nobody in the third grade.
Here's another one from Robin Mavis. Said recently we took a trip to UP, Michigan, and there were tons of Finnish documentation and fishing. Do you have any information about how well the Minnesota Finnish community and the Iron Range country and the UP were affiliated?
I don't know. There must be more Finnish people that would know more about that than I would.
Here's one. When are you going to write a book? You are so eloquent.
Thank you. Yeah, one of these days. I keep saying that. One of these days.
How involved were the Finns back in the days in native culture, like powwows, etc.?
I don't know. When my father married my mother, he was just totally accepted into the Ojibwe community, and he fished with everybody, and he riced with everybody, and he was respected by everybody, and just part of that community. That I don't necessarily see a lot of just pure Finns at powwows, but there are enough Anishinaabe Findian people that they're at powwows, and a lot of them, when I went to medical school in 1990, I went as an Ojibwe medical student. And when my grandmother died when I was 21 or so, the Finnish part of me just fizzled out. And so I went to medical school, to undergraduate and medical school as a native medical student. And it wasn't until 2008, and Ivy and Steve Lepolo were on the committees for FinFest that we met. And as much as I hate to give Steve credit for something on public stuff here, Steve is what reignited that. And all the FinFest stuff is what reignited my Finnish side, and made me realize it's there. Steve Lepolo, it's crazy. He always drives a white car with it's striped like the Finnish flag. Oh, you can see him coming from a mile away. And I can't believe it would happen. I drive the same. I bought Steve's old car, so I was gonna de-stripe it, but there's two of those things now. So, but and people love it, and I do too. I'm proud of it.
I think that story about how George was accepted into Finnish.
Yeah, and well, and I kind of mentioned that before, that George Earth was just accepted as part of that community, but he even just being accepted into my grandparents' house, that didn't happen to Ojibwe people. They weren't allowed in places, and there's racial bias and all that sort of stuff is the fabric this country is built on, and you don't see it. You don't see it because it's just so built in. It's just part of it, and George was just so proud that to the day he died, that my grandparents would let him in the house. He said they just invited me in like I was anybody else, and anybody that knew George Earth, he was so deeply spiritual and so pure and so good and so Kagiji is a word that means, in Ojibwe, it means to appease, to maybe to respect, kind of. Kagiji means to forgive, and it means to whatever things. And again, if there's any angry old Finnish men or women out there or anybody else, out there that, you know, is holding grudges against something, give it up. You know, let it go. You don't need it. It holds you back. It just festers inside of you, you know, and you don't need it. And George was able to do that. But for him to go inside my grandparents' house, my Finnish grandparents' house, to the day he died, it was he was proud of it, you know, and I'd listen to him, and I'm a doctor, for crying out loud, you know, I can't wait in line, you know, someplace hardly. And I have to, but
How did you learn the Ojibwe language if your ancestors went to English-speaking schools only?
there are people that remember it and hold on to it, and there's a movement to try to get people to speak their language. Ojibwe language, you know, I could go on and on about stuff, but you know, we don't have Ojibwe people don't have necessarily a written, you know, we don't have books and a written historical document for us, and our ancestors were so smart, you know, that they put the lessons that we need, they buried them right in our language. And so if we learn our words and we learn to speak our language and we learn to, you know, a treaty kettle, okata kick, it's like, but you know, but there's a meaning behind that. And you know, that you can link that to a outboard motor, you know, and forgiveness, to give, you know, to just let go of things, you know, those lessons are right in there. So there are language tables and places to learn that. And I've been to plenty of those. There are immersion schools that where little kids, there's no English at all in them. All the school, every part of the school is in Ojibwe. We have a friend whose daughter was dreaming, and she was kind of twitching and talking in her sleep, and she was dreaming in Ojibwe, and she was talking Ojibwe. And you know, and that's, you know, I can't think of anything more beautiful than that.
Here's another question. What are Ojibwe sweat lodges like? Anything like
You know, so they're plenty hot, you know. I mean, you know, in Steve's sauna we have that thermometer that I swear the humidity's just painted on that thing, but because it doesn't go up as much as we don't hit nirvana as often as we want to. We do in real life, but not by the numbers. But a sweat lodge is dark inside, so it's like a sauna in the heat. It's a steam culture like Finns have, and it has they don't call it lalu, but the steam. There's a spirit that's in there, and so rocks get heated outside, and they get heated till they're red hot, deeply red hot, not just a little bit on the outside. And so they get heated for hours in a fire that's just, if you ever see a rock, you put a piece of wood there, so you know it's always fire against that rock. And then it's a dome, and it's got a certain number of ribs, and it's like going back into the womb of the grandmother. And I don't necessarily want to give away all our secrets here, but you know, so it's dark inside, and you go inside and they face in a certain direction. When I was in Idaho, Coeur d'Alene Reservation, you know, it faces the rising sun. It doesn't face the east, it faces the rising sun. And then those rocks are brought into a pit, and it's so hot inside there. When they bring in those rocks are glowing. You can see them, and you can see deep inside of them, and they're extremely hot. And you know, 4 again is an important number. You know, we generally go 4 rounds, and each round has a certain significance. So Steve and I, you know, we generally do 4 rounds. Sometimes we, you know, but I try to keep 4 as a number for those things. But you know, when you go into a sweat lodge, you know, there's steam in there, so you know, and so you clean yourself physically, but you clean yourself spiritually too, and you do get rid of things, and you let things go. And you know, in any good sauna, you know, it's the same thing. You know, Steve and I, we joke with each other and we tease each other, and you know, but that's a place to, you know, it's a place to talk about the things that are important, and to, you know, and to mentally and physically and spiritually and emotionally cleanse.
we have several more questions if you have the time.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's one. Your perspective I don't know how to pronounce this, but it's Elder Arne. Your perspective is powerful and I appreciate your sense of humor. My question for you is, can you talk more about your experience about embracing the intersectionality of your Anishinaabe and Finnish heritage?
Well, I have come to realize that both sides of that are important. People get, people hold their cultural identities strongly. I have a friend that drives a car that looks like the Finnish flag, and and I did the same thing. And when I applied to medical school as an Ojibwe student, as a med student, I was a firefighter before I came back to college, a professional firefighter. And the fire chief was this little short Texan guy, and he had it in for me. He didn't like me because I was an Indian, and he didn't like me because I scored well on everything that happened. I was one of the highest scores, and he would only do it to me. He had this little cardboard template thing that he would measure my hair off the collar of my shirt, and if it was a quarter inch longer than it should be, he made me go get a cut. And he could do that, because he was a fire chief. And he used to do that, Tonto thing and stuff like that. And nothing I could do about it. And I never did anything about it. But, when I finally went to medical school, to college and medical school, I tried to keep that part kind of hidden if I could. And I didn't grow my hair long and all that. And, it needs a good combing, but it's that long now. And but part of being Ojibwe, for males, hair, a single strand of hair you can break easy, but it's strength. When things are together, when things are bound together, when things are connected, they're stronger. And that's the way we are too. All of us are. And and that intersectionality thing that you talk about, has just, it's a deep part of who I am. And going to Finland, really opened that up, and seeing how people were so receptive to that, and people were just so generous. And again and again and again, I smelled my grandmother's house. I would walk in and I would hear a clock. Ivy and I stayed in a place one night, and she's like, that clock is driving me crazy. But that clock was my grandmother's clock. I could hear it and I could remember it. And I wrote a poem about it the next morning, that, that clock told me stories of my grandmother in my dreams. And, both those are part of who I am, and I don't have to separate them. I don't have to cut my hair. I don't have to whatever. And, I can still be both. And I can sit with Steve in a sauna, and we can try to burn each other out of that thing, and we can be Finnish. And, but I can be in a sauna, and I can be, I can close my eyes and I can be Ojibwe. I don't even have to close my eyes. And, and all of that stuff is there, and it's part of me. And it's part of the things that my father would have wanted to pass to me. And my dad, people loved him, and he was funny and he was smart. And I don't ever remember his laughter. But when my aunt that I used to visit in California died when she was 94, and I think, when she died, I flew back to Los Angeles, and I went to the morgue, and nobody goes to the morgue in, a big hospital in Los Angeles, but I did. And it took me hours to get in there. And finally the coroner is like, because you're not supposed to be in there. And I was like, listen, I'm a doctor. I don't care if she's got an endotracheal tube sticking out of her. I need to tell her, I'm sorry, I didn't tell her I loved her the last time I talked to her. And when they brought me down into the morgue, and it was cold because it's cold in there. And she was on a table and did have an endotracheal tube sticking out. And he said, you have 15 minutes. And in that 15 minutes, I did tell her I loved her. And I told her that she was my connection to my grandmother and to my Aunt Helmy and to my father. And I didn't get to hear my father's laugh, but I heard it in hers. And sometimes when I laugh, I hear that. I can hear my Aunt Bertie's laugh, and I know that it's my father's laugh. And that's what that means to me.
I have one last, people keep sending more questions, but here's one. Are there any books, I mean fiction, about Finnish Anishinaabe or Finnish Anishinaabe relationship? I've read Down from Basswick by Lynn Vaitala and illustrated by Carl Galboy. Are there any more books like that?
I can't think of a whole lot. So, you know, Liz Yakala's on there, I think. So she's, like I said, she's plenty smart. And, but yeah, I can't think of any right off.
One woman made a comment. My grandmother reminded me I'm not part Sami or part Norwegian. She said which arm is Sami and which is not. It helped a lot with integration identity.
Exactly. And, you know, Sami people and Ojibwe people, you know, there's a lot of parallels. And Ivy and I, we made it as far up as Oulu in Finland when we went to go visit Steve's family. And there's a lot of Finland left. And there's, you know, we want to go into Sami country, and I want to go to Sami country and meet them on that level. You know, not just going to the Sami Walmart or whatever. So I don't think they have those, but you know, I mean, you know, when we travel, when Ivy and I travel, we don't travel for snapshots and touristy stuff. You know, we travel for meaning, and it's there, it's waiting for us.
I mean, one last question was Marian Johnson one of your teachers at Cook?
She was my English teacher. So yeah, she was the principal of Lango School when I first started in the first grade. The first day, because I got nothing to do with Findians or anything. The first day I went to a Lango school, Mr. Politano was the teacher, and he had David Anderson and one of the Straw Boys, I can't remember, bent over holding their ankles, and he had a paddle this long with the holes drilled in it so it would whistle, and it was like a frat thing. And he was whacking them hard on the butt. And they were bent over, and then every time he hit them, they would say, "Thank you, sir. May I have another?" And he'd wind up and whack them again. And I don't know what they did, but they, you know, people tended to listen to Mr. Politano. And but there was a lot of Finns in that school when I was growing up, and you know, you could hear Finnish accents, and you know, the janitors, and you know, even when I was growing up, you know, when I was 16 and drinking and stuff like that, you know, there was a lot of old Finns that remembered my dad and would tell me stuff, and that would just make me drink worse. And you know, and that's a lot of, you know, that's in a lot of Finnish backgrounds. You know, alcohol gets us, and it does for Ojibwe people too. And but some of our best people on both sides, you know, have been through that, and they understand that there's, you know, things that befall you along the way. And if you make it through those things and you come out on the other side, you know, it tends to make people pretty strong. You know, whether that's a passage on a ship at age 19 and not, you know, can you even imagine being on a ship, leaving your homeland, and then just watching it get smaller and smaller and smaller, and then, you know, it would go away, and then a wave would come up, and you'd ride up a little bit and see Finland again a little bit, and it would bob down, and you'd see it again. But there would come a point when that would disappear, and you would wait for it to see it again, and you would never see it. And my grandmother did that. And, you know, you didn't have to tell me that. I know she did that. And she watched from that railing, and it disappeared. And when we went back to Finland in 2010, I brought my grandmother and I brought my grandfather back to Finland. And I could feel it. I could physically feel it. And Ivy and I renewed our wedding vows in a church in Finland. And that was a fiasco. But we got married in Las Vegas. So fiascos are no stranger to us. And, you know, and that in itself is one of the most hilarious stories I've ever told, you know, but we got to live it, you know, and both times it was hilarious, and things didn't go the way they're, you know, but that's okay. That's life. Again, so I'm talking to you, angry Finnish guy, if you're out there, and, you know, if you've never told your wife you love her, or you haven't told her, or you haven't told your kids, say it. Say it. Say it in English. Say it in Finnish.
Mm.
Either way, it's important. They need to hear it and you need to say it. You need to get that off and forgive. That's all I have to say.
Thank you so much. I don't know how we can improve on this. All I can say is I don't even know what to say. People have said, well done, sir. A lot of Kitos. We really appreciate you coming in and talking to us. I've had a request for you for a while now, and I really thank you for coming and talking to us. We've had more tonight than we've had other times. I apologize for some technical issues. The electricity went out here and I had to come back in, so it stopped recording. I started recording again. I hope I can capture the whole thing because I think you have such a wonderful message. Oh, more questions here, but I don't know. Let's see. No, lots of Kitos. Very profound. Kitos Polyon. Well done.
So all of you know when, when you see Ivy and I, and it'll be a when you see an Ivy, we are automatically friends and family.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you on the behalf of FACA. And yeah, till the next time we see you again. And please, you're a member of FACA and join us every month.
All right.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Kitos.
Kitos.